Check. Check. Check, check. Check. Oh. We can make our way to our seats. Thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. I know we just spent half an hour in the chapel praying, but we always begin with a prayer when we have a lecture event or a conference here in Sancta Maria Hall. We always turn to Our Lady and entrust our work to her and to her intercession. And so we begin in the name of the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Remember, most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly into thee, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer us. Amen. Our Lady, Seat of Wisdom. In the name of the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Good evening and welcome again. One point of order, someone forgot a purse in the chapel. That's the first public service announcement is a purse. Good evening again and welcome to St. Patrick's Seminary and University. My name is Father Mark Doherty. I'm the President Rector of St. Patrick's, and on behalf of Archbishop Cordileone, the Archbishop of San Francisco, and the Chancellor of the Board, we're very glad to welcome you this evening. A special welcome to those who are joining us online. A most very special welcome to all the members of the Lai family who are watching from Hong Kong today. Be assured of our prayerful support for you, for Jimmy, and for the entire Lai family. As I make introductions, what I'd like to do is say a few thank yous, but in saying some thank yous, I'd like to give a bit of the backstory to this evening's event. I remember a couple of years ago, I'm an avid reader of the Wall Street Journal editorial page, by the way, so there you go. There's a plug for the Journal editorial page. And most especially Mr. Bill McGurn's columns. And yes, exactly. One of the few bastions of sanity in a crazy world. In any event, I remember a couple of years ago when the CCP made a move on Hong Kong, I started reading Mr. McGurn's columns on Jimmy Lai and Jimmy Lai's witness, his courageous witness. And I said to myself, we've got to get this guy out here to give a lecture. This is critically important. We have a very compelling witness for the faith and for liberty who's taking on a lot of suffering at this point, and his family and loved ones as well. We got to get McGurn out here to give a lecture. So I reached out to a friend and board member here at St. Patrick's, Mr. Peter Robinson, who I know knows Mr. McGurn, and asked Peter if he might be able to make a connection and see if Mr. McGurn would be willing to come out. Sure enough, Peter reached out to Mr. McGurn, and Mr. McGurn expressed a sincere desire to come out, but a couple of years ago, it just wasn't the right time to do so. And so we put that plan on the back burner. Then more recently, as Mr. McGurn has continued to write very compelling columns on Mr. Lai, most recently just a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think, I thought maybe it's time to come back to this idea and get him out here for a lecture event. And here I had the good fortune of not only reaching back out to Peter Robinson, but also Ambassador Joseph Sella, who joins us this evening. Mr. Ambassador, welcome to St. Patrick's. And Ambassador Sella graciously agreed to try to connect me with Mr. McGurn again. And this time it seemed like the timing was right. God's timing was in the moment. And so Mr. McGurn graciously agreed to come out and give this event. This lecture event. As we began to make preparations, I got word from Miss Maggie Gallagher, who is here this evening. I saw Maggie come in. Maggie, you know I have bad eyesight. I know you're some, oh, there she is, right there. Maggie reached out. Maggie is the executive director of the Benedict XVI Institute, which is co-sponsoring this evening's event. Maggie reached out and said, hey, you know, this is great you're putting on this event. Don't you know, Mr. Frank LaRocca has composed a piece for the Chinese martyrs. It's never been performed. What if we do a dual event? We have prayer in the chapel, and then we go into Santa Maria for a lecture. And I thought it was a terrific idea, terrific inspiration, so I'd like to thank Maggie Gallagher for taking the initiative and proposing that. And a thanks to Mr. Frank LaRocca, who is here this evening, I think, also. I have terrible eyesight. There you go. Mr. LaRocca, thank you for your beautiful work. Thank you so much for everything you do to serve God, give glory to God. And then, of course, I turn to one of my colleagues here at the seminary, Dr. Jennifer Donaldson-Novitska, who is our professor of sacred music and director of sacred music here at the seminary. I know Jenny is somewhere, probably. There she is. I'd like to thank you, Jenny, for taking the reins and organizing the sacred music component of this evening's event. So thank you to one and all. Many hands came in to produce this event, and we're very glad to have you here in person, and all of those of you here attending online through the live stream. There's going to be a couple of things this evening, and before we begin, I'd like to make one last little announcement. I'd like to make special mention of a Miss Frances Hui, who is here this evening as well, I think. I have terrible eyesight, and oh, she's not here. Okay, so Ms. Hui is the author of a report entitled Hostile Takeover, the CCP and Hong Kong's Religious Communities. It's a report that she has spearheaded, and I think would be available online for those who have any interest in looking it up. The first part of this component is going to be a video message from Mr. Sebastian Lai, one of Jimmy Lai's sons. He was unable to attend this evening in person. He wanted to, but it didn't quite work out. But he graciously recorded a video for us, and so we're going to begin by playing that video. Thank you, Anthony.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Lai, and my father is Jimmy Lai. Over the last 3 years, my father has been in jail in Hong Kong for his pro-democracy campaign and as journalist. At 76, he now faces his national security law trial. He faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. Every day he goes to court and has false witness bad against him. Some of these statements have been allegedly received through torture from both Hong Kong government and China. By all intents and purposes, this is a show trial. There's no jury, there's 3 government-appointed judges. And so the outcome is more or less predetermined. Yet Dan goes every day, knowing that, with his head held up high, because he knows that he did the right thing. That standing for democracy, standing for freedom, standing for free speech is the right thing. That he did right by himself, by the people of Hong Kong, and more importantly, by God. I don't think that if he didn't have his religion, he would have the same spirit that he does now. And I know that he prays very deeply every day. So I'd like to thank you all for being here. Bill McGurn, who is my father's godfather. I know I always say this, but I don't think my father could have picked a better godfather. And I hope that, my father is as you can see, has really taken up his duty as a Catholic to stand up for what is right. Joe Sadler, another great friend of my father's, again, incredibly grateful that both of you are here. I would also like to thank Cardinal Leo. It was such an honor meeting you a few months ago. Thank you very much for bringing attention to my father's case. I know that, especially now, my father needs your prayers more than ever. So thank you. I ask that you all, everybody here, call for his immediate release and ask the Vatican to do the same. It is a case of moral clarity, and more importantly, at my father's age, he could die anytime in Britain. So thank you all for doing this, and hopefully with all our thoughts, prayers, and actions, we'll be able to release him. Thank you, and God bless.
And now I would like to introduce our guest lecturer. Mr. William McGurn is a member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board and writes the weekly Main Street column for the journal each Tuesday. Previously, he served as chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush. Mr. McGurn has served as chief editorial writer for the Wall Street Journal in New York. He spent more than a decade overseas, in Brussels for the Wall Street Journal Europe, and in Hong Kong with both the Asian Wall Street Journal and the Far Eastern Economic Review. And in the mid-1990s, he was Washington bureau chief for National Review. Mr. McGurn is author of a book on Hong Kong entitled Perfidious Albion, and a monograph on terrorism entitled Terrorist or Freedom Fighter. He's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy from Notre Dame and a master's in communications from Boston University. And very importantly, he happens to be Mr. Jimmy Lai's godfather. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Bill McGurn to the podium.
I should say thank you to Father, though you did make me sound like I couldn't keep a job. I moved at a lot of things. I didn't know about Sebastian, that video. It's a symbol of how much the family is suffering. I've known Sebastian literally from the first day he was born in Hong Kong. He's grown up as a fine young man in the image of his father. He must make his father proud. He can't go to Hong Kong or he'll be arrested. So he's living in Taiwan. He got married a year and a half ago. I stood in for his dad, and he just had a baby. So there's beautiful things happening, but again, Jimmy can't see his granddaughter, and it's another thing the Lais have to endure. I also want to thank the Archbishop for a beautiful service, and Frank LaRocca for writing it, and Francis Wee for promoting it. It was just superbly done and very moving. So with that said, let me begin. Archbishop Corleone, Ambassador Sella, distinguished guests, and most important of all, our future priests of our church, the good men of St. Patrick's Seminary. Thank you for inviting me into your home to speak about Jimmy Lai. It's good to see so many Roman collars around here. I have to say, it reminds me of a story about an Irish priest in a country parish on the east coast of Ireland. One night he's in bed, and he hears this immense racket outside his bedroom window. And then he hears the sound of something crashing down. So he goes outside, puts on his robe, goes outside, and he discovers one of his parishioners spread out flat on his back among the garbage cans that he'd been standing on. He had been trying to stand on the garbage cans to reach the priest's window and get the priest's attention. He's also plastered. So Father asks him, "Paddy, whatever are you doing here at this hour?" And Paddy says, "Well, Father, it's like this. We need to talk about the preeminent challenge of ecumenism in our time." Father says, "Paddy, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll tell you what, be a good lad, go home, get a good night's sleep, take a shower, then come over here tomorrow morning. I'll make a pot of tea, and then we'll sit down and have a grand old chat about the preeminent challenge of ecumenism in our time." Paddy looks at him and says, "Father, you don't understand at all. When I'm sober, I don't give a damn about the preeminent challenge of ecumenism in our time." I trust this is not how you feel about Jimmy Lai. For those of you who are not familiar with the name or the man, he's a Hong Kong entrepreneur who founded two of its leading publications, Next Magazine and Apple Daily. He's in prison today for a simple reason. His publications told the truth about China and Hong Kong. And though communism comes in many flavors, Soviet, Cuban, Chinese, the one thing that unites them all is that communism can never tolerate truth or truth tellers. Right now, Jimmy is on trial for sedition and colluding with foreign forces. We all know he's going to be found guilty, not least because the government has stacked every deck it could. The government is prosecuting Jimmy to build their narrative, and that is that Jimmy Lai was the mastermind of the mass demonstrations against the government in 2019 and 2020. The foreign collusion charge is in there because the Hong Kong and Chinese governments insist that Chinese people themselves would never dream of demanding their own freedom or that the government honor its promises. They would do so only if sinister foreign forces manipulated them. My own relationship with Jimmy is personal. Though we are both newspapermen and share a love for the writing of economist Friedrich Hayek, Jimmy is also my godson, and our wives and children are close and intertwined. Jimmy was received into the Catholic Church a week after the British returned Hong Kong to China in 1997. For many of us who lived through that, it was a very dark time. Jimmy's baptism came as a sign of hope amid the gloom, like a small green shoot breaking through the concrete. On the day of Jimmy's baptism, more than 25 years ago, I looked at him in church and I really wondered, how much does he really believe? There were so many social reasons to convert. Many of his closest friends and allies were Catholic. Even as a non-believer, he admired religions for the good they contributed to Hong Kong society, and especially the Catholic Church. And he had to know that his wife, Teresa, a cradle Catholic, would be thrilled by his baptism. Today, I confess to you all, I'm ashamed I had those doubts. Excuse me. Jimmy believes we were created for truth, and that it's our job to speak the truth, especially when no one else will, whatever the cost. How else could a man so willingly exchange the comfortable life of a Hong Kong multimillionaire for the prison cell of a Chinese dissident? Within an hour or so after his arrest, Teresa emailed me a photo of Jimmy in chains and handcuffs. She said the security forces were doing it to humiliate him. I told her not to worry about that. The people of Hong Kong would see those handcuffs and chains as badges of honor, because every man, woman, and child in Hong Kong knows Jimmy chose those chains. That photograph of Jimmy today hangs on the wall next to my desk, where I look at it every day when I begin work. To be clear, Jimmy wasn't jailed because his faith was against the law, but he freely accepted handcuffs and prison bars because of his faith. Most people saw Jimmy's arrest coming. His friends all urged him to leave Hong Kong and to go live in one of his many homes abroad, in Paris, Tokyo, Taiwan, etc. And no one would have blamed him if he had. But let me tell you this, if you thought that was ever a possibility, you don't know Jimmy Lai. Jimmy submitted to chains and handcuffs as an act of solidarity with the thousands of fellow Hong Kongers, far less famous than he is, people who did not have the choices he did and were likewise arrested. I mentioned Jimmy's my godson, but I should also mention that his wife is perhaps the strongest, most faithful Catholic I have ever met. And that's crucial to understanding Jimmy's witness. When she married Jimmy 30 years ago, she knew this day might come. Jimmy, by nature, is a fighter. He came to Hong Kong very poor as a child, snuck in on a boat and everything, and penniless. And he lived on the streets. So he's a street kid. He knows how to survive. When my wife and I lived in Hong Kong, robbers came into his home one night and threatened his family. One tried to take Teresa's wedding ring. Jimmy fought back, and they conked him over the head with a wrench. But, he would proudly point out, they didn't get the ring. That's Jimmy Lai. That's his instinct to fight. Teresa's strength is different, not weaker, but complementary. In Teresa, we can see what St. Paul means when he tells us that love beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. She sees the suffering of her family as redemptive. When I saw her last in person a few months ago, her husband was in prison, her children scattered in different countries, and old friends turning on her family. It's all worth it, she told me. Here's what she tells her husband. Jimmy, I am your wife. I will stand by your side, and I will walk this path with you every step of the way. But you must pick up your cross, you must embrace it, and you must try to be a saint, because that is what we are all called to be, even in prison, maybe especially in prison. And guess what? This proud, tough Chinese man does exactly what his wife says, because each trusts the other absolutely, the way two people in a Catholic marriage should. It is a terrible, awesome, humbling thing to witness. These days, Jimmy has come to regard prison as his own version of the holy rule of St. Benedict. Pray and work, the perfect balance. Archbishop Corleone, he reads so much theology now that Cardinal Zen complains that when he goes to visit Jimmy, he has to bone up on his theology first. Because Jimmy's going to ask him some question from Boethius or Thomas. And when he's not reading the classics of the faith in an effort to draw closer to God, he's devoting himself to his new vocation, which he takes very seriously as a Catholic artist. In other words, Jimmy may be in prison, but his soul remains free. His is the spirit of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who said, "Bless you, prison, bless you for being in my life. For there, lying upon the rotting prison straw, I came to realize that the object of life is not prosperity as we are made to believe, but the maturity of the human soul." In November 2020, a month before his arrest, Jimmy did an extraordinary podcast with former Soviet dissident Nathan Sharansky. Jimmy was clearly steeling himself for his own imprisonment. He observed that Sharansky drew strength for his resistance from two blessings the men have in common: a strong religious faith and the unbendable love of a good wife. They discussed how important it is to never back down and to live as a free man, even in prison, by rejecting the lies the government pushes. Sharansky wished Jimmy strength and will in the trials ahead. He advised him to regard the burden laid down on him as a blessing. Quote, "And if you are chosen by the faith, by God, by your people to lead, to be the example of this moment, It's a great responsibility, but it's also a great joy. So enjoy it. Nobody enjoys prison. Not Jimmy Lai, not Teresa, not their children. But Sharansky was onto something. Witness without cost is virtue signaling. My friends, I've gone on too long. Jimmy would want me to thank you again for remembering him. Teresa would add the only thing this good-hearted woman ever says when people ask what they can do: pray. For as honored as Jimmy and Teresa are by the praise they receive, they are absolutely overwhelmed and humbled by the tens of thousands of people across the world, people like you they do not know and probably will never meet, who are praying for them. They ask only that when you hit your knees tonight to remember the lies to the Almighty, you also lift up in prayer the many others in Hong Kong and China who are also in prison for the same reasons as Jimmy and handling it with the same grace and courage, but who are unknown and unnoticed by our world and therefore in desperate need of our love and attention. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for coming, and thank you for listening. And never, ever let anyone tell you your prayers are wasted, because there is a good man in a lonely prison cell on the other side of the world who would tell you that your prayers are what keeps them going. God bless you all, and God bless life. I guess Father said if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Be a microphone that.
Pardon me? No. And I'll tell you a story. I know I can't. The Chinese hacked my email, and they hate the Wall Street Journal because we raised Jimmy's case all the time. They've gone after my boss, and we know that. So when we went to Sebastian's wedding in Taiwan, Jimmy asked me to stand in for him. On the way back, I came home, and my wife, Julie, and my eldest daughter, Grace, my girls, 3 girls are adopted from China, so they're Chinese. They decided to stop in Hong Kong and spend some time with Teresa, just as friends, you know, girls. It'd be some relief for Teresa and so forth. So I got in from my Taiwan flight. I arrived home. I got in at 11:30 p.m. And then I got a text at like 11:45 p.m. from my daughter saying, "We've been detained at the airport." And it was really scary because we never renounced Chinese citizenship. She was American, but you never know what China's going to do. They could say, "We don't recognize it." And they held them for 6 hours. And they searched their bags, and they brought out a file from when Julie and I lived there. They had our Hong Kong IDs. They knew all about things. And I think my wife handled it differently. She said she wasn't there to see anyone, but in her bag she has all this wedding stuff about Sebastian Lai, so they knew who we were. I would have said, of course I'm here to see Teresa Lai, my good friend, and the Cardinal, because they're good friends. Is there a law against that? But she had the wit, once she realized, you know, they caught her and were watching, not to go in. They left for Hong Kong. But it took 6 hours. I called the consulate first, like it's midnight my time, and I was getting no answer. And I called Joe, and I have a mutual friend, Mark Simon, who runs Jimmy's things. I said, who should I can't get through to the ambassador. And Mark said, call the Marine Barracks. They're always going to be on call. So I called, I called them, and they put me through. And they couldn't do anything, but they did let the Chinese know we know you have these Americans and are interrogating them. And so in 6 hours, they said, you're free to come in, but they instead took a flight back to Taiwan, which was the wise thing to do. Did Jimmy? Did you have? I don't think so. Jimmy was kind of, the protests were around, and I don't think he was, I'm sure his paper and magazine covered it, but I don't think that was not his passion. And actually, he was arrested, was it 2020? He was in jail, you know, after that, so. What happened also, for those of you who don't know, his paper, Apple Daily, which stayed in business, reporting on the government, the people were buying copies like it was going out of style. The government closed it down, and then they stole it from him. They just took it. No court order, just a police statement, and they took it from him. So they took his property. Any other? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Very good presentation. What do you think the Vatican could do that would be effective?
I think they could speak up, not just for Jimmy. There's a lot of Chinese Catholics that have been arrested. I'll have to say Francis, whom Father mentioned, would know. There were a lot of young women that were jailed. Like in Hong Kong, they're not all going to be jailed for Jimmy like life, but people are jailed for tweets. There's a song, Glory to Hong Kong. I don't think it's a good song, but it's kind of the anthem of the freedom people. And people have been jailed for playing it on a harmonica and so forth. And, you know, for a young girl who is middle class to be jailed, that's a rough thing. Like Jimmy was a street kid, again, and believe it or not, the other criminals like him. He's a guy's guy. People would like him. So it's not as hard for him. And he started out life very poor and everything. So he's used to it. But for some of these kids from middle-class families who, you know, their offense might be lighting a candle in memory of Tiananmen, that's a hard thing. Yes. Oh, yeah, no, I know. I'm in the video. It's Father Sirico, the Hong Konger. It's a great video on Jimmy's story if you're looking for some information about it. And Father Sirico did go to Hong Kong, and he spent a day sitting next to Teresa in court, so.
I have a question. Has there been any specific charges against Jimmy Lai, and what is his sentence in terms of years? And also I have a question about Cardinal Zen, if he's able to visit Jimmy Lai often, and what is Cardinal Zen's position? Is he also being on the watch list?
Yeah. Cardinal Zen, I've known for like 30 years. He is a great man. He's like your Archbishop here, a good guy and really brave. And Cardinal Zen has been Jimmy's good friend. In 1997, he was the one who baptized Jimmy into the church. So they've been allies, and Cardinal Zen set up a fund to pay the legal defense fund for the people arrested for pro-democracy actions and so forth, poor people who couldn't afford a lawyer. And he set it up with a group of other prominent people who are broadly pro-democracy and so forth. Well, they were charged with the government for illegal, like filing or something, and they were found guilty, and he was fined, I think it was $1,000, it wasn't that big, but he kind of has to worry about speaking out now because he doesn't want to get his co-defendants in trouble for what he's willing to go to jail. Now, he also faces a foreign collusion charge himself, but they haven't prosecuted that. They don't want to prosecute Cardinal Zen. You know, they don't have a criminal trial of Cardinal Zen. He would love it. He's always visited prisons even before Jimmy, it's a special vocation. And if, you mentioned him, you could go to jail, Cardinal. He would say, it'd be the crowning gift of my life. I'm a Cardinal, the red hat to wear to remind you, your willingness to lay down your life. And he said, he would probably say, besides, half my parish is in jail. Make it easier for me to make my rounds. So he visited Jimmy a lot in there, but he's only 93, and I think he has mobility issues. I'm not in touch with him because I'll get him in trouble, I think, if he's in touch with me. So I haven't directly been in touch with him. As for Jimmy, he's faced a lot of charges. There were some minor charges about the demonstrations. Then there was charges of corruption over a lease. They want to be able to say he's a corrupt businessman who betrayed his country. That's what they're aiming at. So they convicted him on the business charges, and he had a 5-year sentence or something for that. And now it's the national security charges, the big charges. So what we hope is that after he's convicted, the pressure can grow to free him. And there's some reasons that it'd be in China's interest to free him. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about the relationship between the Vatican and the Chinese government and the assignment of bishops and all that? Is this the reason that maybe they're not speaking out for?
Well, I'll get in a lot of trouble if I'll just say my views are very compatible with Cardinal Zen's. And you can look up what he said.
Could you tell us a little more about Jimmy Lai's conversion and how you came to be his godfather?
Well, we were kind of good friends. Like, Jimmy and I were compatible in, like, our careers. He owned the paper, but I mentioned Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman. We kind of shared the same beliefs in freedom. But really what drew us really close is that our wives were great friends. They hit it off. And by the end, we were spending like every night at the Lies. And Sebastian was not always as well behaved as he comes across here. When he was young, he used to play with Grace, and the Lies had this priceless art on their walls. And one night we were over there, and Sebastian and Grace had drawn on one of the artworks in crayon. In my lifetime, I couldn't pay off that. And I was worried, and they said, don't worry about it, and they got it cleaned or something, but difference in approach. So we knew the Lies as a family. Like, though his godfather, I feel really like his brother. Our family's very mixed and comfortable with him. And Teresa had been bugging me to ask him to convert, because she's the wife. She didn't want to nag him, and she would say, he'll listen to you. You're a friend rather than me and everything. So actually, about a week or two before the handover in '97, I asked Jimmy, would you consider being a Catholic? And part of my belief is you should always ask people that you know and you care about. And they can say no, but you should ask them, because some people need an invitation. They don't think of it. So he shot me down. And he told me, I own a newspaper. I like the Catholic Church, but I like all religions. And I feel if I joined one, I'd kind of ruin my credibility with the others. Okay, I didn't think it was a very good reason, but, it's free will. And I asked him, and he said no. And my belief was, I'm not the guy who's going to convert him. God is. I might be a vehicle, but it's God's time, and so forth. So he said that. Teresa was disappointed. My wife was disappointed. 2 weeks later, we're in his apartment. It was right before the handover, and he pulled me aside and he said, Bill, I want Christ in my life. And it happened. He called the cardinal. The cardinal gave him expedited instructions, And he belonged, and he was baptized. And as I said, at the time, I worried is more social than actually belief in the doctrine or something. I mean, he was sincere, but I just wondered, you know, how much, a lot of the leaders of the democracy movement, like Francis, are Catholic, you know, probably because they're more liberally educated in Hong Kong. So it was a surprise, and it was a great surprise. And, you know, now seeing him now, you know, plowing through, you know, Augustine and Thomas and stuff, it's incredible watching him. And his letters are full of, because we write, I can't really write about politics, so it's usually about family and faith. And he's more than willing to write me a page asking questions about things. So that's kind of how we got it. But I'm very resistant to people saying, I converted him. I asked him, and I was close to him. If anything, I think his wife's prayers, and of course God moved his heart. Yes, ma'am.
This might be confusing. Previously to the other question, regarding, like, there's a lot spoken in Hong Kong through Jimmy that the Pope literally is not doing anything, not coming forward. So at the same time, the Chinese really have, Hong Kong has maybe well, how shall I say, I don't want to, they're not really worried that the United States, like, I know they have their own thing, but the same thing.
Right. Well, Jimmy's feeling is, Jimmy's an optimist.
He does mention that, you know, not him, but
He does mention.
government are scared of us, period. I mean, they don't have any influence from us, which some, you know.
Well, no, I don't think the Vatican has great influence, though the deal does give them some. I think it's a bad deal, all that. So I don't have a lot of hopes for that. But we do have hope. There's a lot of good reasons Hong Kong might want to release Jimmy after they convict him. Again, they want to say he's a corrupt businessman who was a traitor, Chinese traitor, convicted in the court of law. They're very proud of that. And they're going to get that. And there's nothing we can do before they get that. But after they get that, there's a lot of reasons, like Sebastian mentioned. Jimmy is 10 years older than I am, so he's like 76. He has diabetes. They don't want him to die in prison. They had one Nobel Prize winner. And, you know, some people have called for the Nobel Prize for Jimmy, and they had one guy in China who won the Nobel Prize and then died in prison. They don't want that. That's not good for them. There's a lot of publicity about Jimmy. The U.S., Britain, Europe, a lot of criticism of the trial and so forth. So they don't like that either. He's been in jail 3.5 years. If they convict him, maybe they keep him for another years, and we could go and say, you made your point. You know, people know if you can get a billionaire like Jimmy Lai, you can get an ordinary schlub like me, you know? So you might say they made their point. And also, the new governor of Hong Kong and some of the officials who cracked down on those protests a couple of years ago, they're under U.S. sanctions. They can't come here. They couldn't come. John Lee, he couldn't come here last year for the APEC summit last year because of these sanctions, and there's a whole bunch of them. So maybe there could be a deal. You let Jimmy go, we'll drop the sanctions. So there's a lot of reasons for hope.
We're not standing up for our faith.
Well, I would agree in general, but Archbishop Corleone, I don't know how many the other bishops, there were 10 bishops that signed a letter on Jimmy's behalf. There are a couple, and there's some support. Catholic U, they just hung one of Jimmy's prison artworks in their school, so there's actually some progress.
Oh, I know that. We have to pray for his
Right.
family. But at the same time, the Vatican, the Pope is not stepping up for our faith.
Well, I'm not going to endorse the Pope's approach to China. As I say, Cardinal Zen speaks out pretty loudly, and my views would be nothing he says I would disagree with. So, but I don't want to attack the Pope in the seminary here. Anyone else? Yes, Sam?
What are the conditions that he's imprisoned under? I'm asking you because I'm a great admirer of Cardinal Kong and the imprisonment that he endured. He was prevented from, I remember reading that people weren't even allowed to look him in the face unless they were trying to indoctrinate him. He couldn't have contact with his family. He couldn't say Mass. He couldn't read anything Catholic, have his devotional materials. And I'm just wondering if it's a different situation with
It is a little. I asked Jimmy early on, and he said, in Hong Kong, the prisons were built by the British, and the Chinese haven't gotten around to messing it up yet. I've used a different word for messing it than he used. And so that's one of the fears, that they could move Jimmy to China for jail. He'd be away from Teresa. Teresa can visit. That's a horror. So it's not as harsh physically. He's under solitary confinement, which is really hard. But what I'm told is the prison guards like him, and the criminals like him. He's a guy's guy. He's hard to dislike. And so they call him Mr. Lie in prison. So it's hard, but it's not. He's not being tortured. It's not brutal the way it could be in some parts of China.
and he's making art, and he's reading Thomas Aquinas, and
Yes.
okay, and he's corresponding, and people are visiting him.
He's
Corresponding with people, and people are visiting him.
I'm sorry. Oh yes, I correspond with him all the
yes.
time, twice a month, and again, we avoid political topics at all. Although they're all opened, and I always feel like I should have a sentence like, the mockingbird from Shanghai is awaiting worms from Hong Kong, and see if the Chinese intelligence tries to figure out what the message is. But I'm afraid it would confuse Jimmy, too. He would have thought Bill's lost his mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGurn. We'd like to now invite you over to the refectory for the reception, where you have an occasion to speak further with Mr. McGurn if you'd like. The seminarians will direct you. It's out the doors and to the left, your right, my left, and then over to the building over here. Thank you very much.